We've got to rebuild them from the ground up. When they bankrupt their stress coping savings accounts, what we've got to realize is, how do we fill their stress coping savings account back up? Well, the way that we do that here in this audience is every night when we go into deep sleep, delta wave sleep, we make deposits into our savings account. So when we go into deep sleep, we're making deposits back into our stress coping savings account. When we do that, we make deposits of serotonin, human growth hormone, DHEA, cortisol. The body is able to arrest and repair itself. The catch-22 for those with fibromyalgia, and why they literally are crazy in many ways, is that you need a lot of a brain chemical called serotonin, a neurotransmitter. You need a lot of serotonin to go into deep restorative sleep, because if you remember your biochemistry, serotonin turns into melatonin. And melatonin is what regulates our circadian rhythms. It's the sleep hormone. Unfortunately, what happens is, because these individuals are low in serotonin, they don't go into deep sleep, and they don't make serotonin. It's a vicious cycle. And what the studies show is this. No matter really what the illness is, if an individual is not getting deep restorative sleep, they're going to have problems with not being able to lose weight, low thyroid, low immune function, increased pain, of course increased fatigue. They're going to suffer from anxiety and depression, mental fog, poor memory, and the list goes on. Why is that? Well, a big reason is this. Because the higher your serotonin level, the less pain you have. Why is that? Well, one reason that is because serotonin blocks a hormone called substance P. And the higher your level of substance P, the less likely you are to be able to tolerate pain. So for these individuals, what happens is they may start off with a little bit of neck pain, and as their serotonin gets lower and lower and lower, then they have pain throughout their body, because as the years go on, they get to where they can't stand any additional sensation or any additional pain. Some of these people, as you know, you can't even you can't hug them, you can't touch them. Chiropractors, you've got to be very careful when you adjust them. Some of them you can't even shake their hands. That's how low their pain threshold is. So the higher your serotonin, the less pain they have. The higher the serotonin, the happier you are. That's the happy hormone, right? The higher the serotonin, the less anxious a person is. The higher the serotonin, less likely you are to have fibrofog. The fibrofog is just literally what the name implies. They kind of walk around in a fog. They can't remember what day of week it is, what their name is. They can't remember their appointments, right? They call your office 15 times a day and ask the same questions. All this is because of low serotonin. Now, the other thing that you may not know that I think is very interesting is that you have more serotonin receptors in your intestinal tract than you do in your brain. That's why when you get nervous and you get butterflies where? In your stomach, not in your head. So you have more serotonin receptors in your intestinal tract. Those with irritable bowel syndrome, the cause of irritable bowel syndrome predominantly, there's some other issues maybe we'll be able to get into, low magnesium, certainly digestive disorders, digestive enzymes, all the things that you know to use. But the big problem with irritable bowel syndrome is that serotonin levels need to be at optimal levels to be able to regulate how fast or slow food moves through the intestinal tract. So when they're low in serotonin, they're going to have irritable bowel syndrome, which 80% of those with fibromyalgia have irritable bowel syndrome. Now, in traditional medicine, what happens is, we know this, okay? In traditional medicine, what we have tried to rely on is mostly selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. Paxil, Zoloft, Prozac, Lexapro. There'll be a new one out next week. They're all the same. They're just a little bit different. Effexor, we'll talk about that one. It's in Cymbalta, a little bit different. But these are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. And I'm going to say every one. I mean, 99% of the patients I work with fibromyalgia. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and wrote this book, because what's happening, we're being, basically told that everyone has a Prozac deficiency. If you're a female, you're some 60 times more likely, if you go to your family doctor, to get recommended an antidepressant. whatever it is, let's give you an antidepressant. So no one has an antidepressant deficiency. Selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they don't make serotonin, right? So they don't make serotonin. If we look at a normal brain, in a normal brain, we get serotonin from the foods that we eat. And I'm going to talk to you about that in just a moment. But typically, we have serotonin in the brain racing around that allows us to be able to be happy and functional at optimal levels. What these medications do is they come along and they selectively reuptake serotonin. They keep serotonin active in the brain longer. They're like a gasoline additive. They're not gasoline, but they help the gasoline work better. Here's the problem with that scenario. The patients that you're going to see with fibromyalgia, this is what their brains are going to look like. You get that? They don't have any serotonin. If they had some serotonin, they wouldn't have fibromyalgia. They'd be able to sleep. They wouldn't have so much pain. They wouldn't have irritable bowel. So using a gasoline additive, when there's no gasoline, doesn't get you very far. Now, it makes more sense to me to look at where does serotonin come from. You're all familiar with that, 5-hydroxytryptophan, which comes from the amino acid tryptophan. So tryptophan is an amino acid, it's one of the essential amino acids that you have to have. And tryptophan then turns into 5-hydroxytryptophan, which then, along with cofactors, magnesium, certain B vitamins, B3, B2, B1, vitamin C, calcium, then turns on into serotonin. Well, if that's the case, why not? Now, tryptophan is available by prescription in this country. It used to be available over the counter. In 1990, the company Shaldenko from Japan that supplied probably 80% of tryptophan in this country, they had a bad batch of tryptophan that came in, and people became very ill from that. In fact, dozens of people died from that. And it was a tragedy. I mean, it was a terrible thing. Tryptophan is cultured from a bacteria, so you run that risk of having a contaminated batch. 5-HTP comes from a plant, an African plant. You don't run that risk of having the contamination. In 1990, as tryptophan was being pulled off the health food store shelves, being pulled off the shelves, and realized that for 30 years people have been using tryptophan to help them with sleep, pain, and mood disorders. 30 years. As they're pulling tryptophan off the shelves in the health food stores, they're stocking the drugstores with what? Prozac. And the world has never been the same. Now, they never took tryptophan out of baby formula. Why? Boy, you guys are dead. Why? Why? What did I say earlier? Tryptophan is an essential. What does that mean, essential? It means you have to have it. If you don't have it, you die. They never took tryptophan out of baby formula. Right? But they took it off the store shelves. Well, don't fret. And when I go around and talk, I encourage my medical doctors who are using prescription tryptophan to switch to 5-HTP. The reason why is 5-HTP is a step closer to getting past the blood-brain barrier. It's absorbed much more effectively past the blood-brain barrier. The blood-brain barrier keeps toxic material out of the brain. Thank goodness we have that. It's kind of the guard that allows the good stuff to get in the brain, keeps the bad stuff out. But 5-HTP has no problem getting into the brain. Now, there's some literature out there about certain medications used in Europe, which we don't have here, that they recommend you use with 5-HTP or it doesn't work. Well, I'm not exactly sure where this particular organization, a well-known organization who has this on their website in their books, gets that. But I can tell you from being in the trenches with these people, where the rubber meets the road, clinical practice. I've been using 5-HTP for about 6 years now, maybe longer, and I've got thousands of people on 5-HTP around the world because of the website. It works. It works. It does get past the blood-brain barrier.